Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keelan.
This is Zenith, that podcast where we accidentally save our worst enemy, because this week we watched Trial.
Written by Chris Boucher.
Directed by Derek Martinez.
And aired on February 13th, 1979.
Right, I believe coming right at the tail end of Armageddon Factor. I think Armageddon Factor has finished at this point, so I think we might be into the inter-season year now.
Sure, yeah, I'm glad you keep remembering to mention what Doctor Who story was airing at the time of the episode's airing, because I completely forget that we even do that every single week.
Well, that's okay.
But since it's my last opportunity to mention it, I'll just say, go do yourself a favor, watch Armageddon Factors.
Or
my
do yourself
favorite
a
Doctor
favor
Who story ever.
And take your copy of Armageddon Factor and run it over with your car and then throw it into your fireplace. You'll get a lot more enjoyment out of that than you will out of the story itself. So, anyway, this story begins with just people walking through a corridor.
Yeah, there's these two guards in a nondescript corridor guarding a room, and these are some of the worst actors on Blake 7 ever. Just in the entire, basically, year and a month that this show's been on, or since its first airing at this point, these actors are really bad.
Mm-hmm. So...
And what's his name wasn't even that bad later on, but in this scene, he was just sort of grating.
Right.
I don't remember his name, honestly.
The two guards?
The one guard who... I think they both had a name, but one of them comes back later. He goes to Travis's cell a little bit later.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name.
It was the same guy.
And then so these two guys show up, and I'm going to look up their name because they actually showed up before, apparently. Oh, yeah, the names of the guards are Parr and Lai.
Yeah, I don't remember which one's which.
Rontaine and Burkall who come together.
Who we saw, I think, in episode 1.
No, just Seek, Locate, Destroy. According to the wiki, anyway.
Okay.
According to their IMDb pages.
All right, yeah. So they'd appeared before, and I knew that they had appeared before when I saw them.
Yeah, they have a lot bigger role in this. They're like really snarky and make a lot of side comments at the trial, and I was like, these remind me of those two Muppets. What were their names? I had to go look them up. They were Statler and Waldorf, the two Muppets who just heckle Fozzie Bear in his comedy routine every time he's on stage, and heckle everybody else on stage too. So.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we start with this shot of where these people are and sort of this circular space station. I was like, is that Space City?
Oh, I was like, is that the wheel in space from The Wheel in Space?
Doctor Who episode or story. The one that introduced Zoe, of all people.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rontaine and Burkall are admitted, and then there's this General Samor, I think was his name.
Right.
Also gets admitted.
We find out through the dialogue that a trial is going on, and that's why all these people are here. We don't know whose trial it is yet. But you find out in 2 minutes because we cut to Servalan talking with this lady who is apparently the defense attorney, and she's like, make sure Travis loses. I was like, oh, great. So it's Travis's trial. They really court-martialed him at last, and this makes sense, right? Because Servalan was basically the only thing stopping Travis from being either imprisoned or court-martialed or put on trial, basically.
Right, and after last week,
Servalan's basically done with Travis.
So,
but at the same time, I was not really okay with having this come right off the heels of Pressure Point.
Really?
I didn't want another Servalan and Travis episode.
See, I was okay with it because I thought, in my mind, if we're going to get repercussions from Pressure Point, because this story makes no sense if you haven't watched Pressure Point. I feel like this is the first episode truly so far that you cannot watch standalone. You have to have watched Pressure Point to understand what's going on.
You might be able to say the same thing for The Way Back in Spacefall, but to a lesser extent. And Deliverance in Aurak.
Kind of.
But to a lesser extent.
But like for this story, I wanted them to address Gan dying, and I wanted them to address the repercussions of that. And in my mind, if they were going to do that, it had to be the week after. They couldn't put that off because if they put it off, then it wouldn't have worked at all.
Yeah, that I agree with. I'm glad they addressed that, and that was sort of the main driving thing behind what goes on the Liberator. But as far as Travis's trial, I didn't think that needed to be in this episode, nor did I want it to be in this episode.
I think it did because I think that's a repercussion of Pressure Point, of Gan's death, because
Yeah, it is for Travis and Servalan.
Travis and Servalan get, trapped because of Travis,
Trying
and
to kill
Servalan
Blake,
is just over it at this point, right? I feel like it is a repercussion of last week's story, and so it has to come this week in my mind.
But I just don't want 2 Travis and Servalan episodes in a row, really.
I mean, there was no way to avoid that, though.
The workings of the Federation, I mean, when you think about the Federation as this massive entity, it's going to take a lot longer to do anything than it is within like a 7-8 person crew. So that's why it's more appropriate for me that they address Pressure Point on the Liberator and not with Travis and Servalan. Although, I mean, I would have wanted, Travis to be put on trial or something to happen, preferably something more interesting than this episode, because if you couldn't tell, I don't really like this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I would have wanted that to be addressed at some point, but maybe not in this episode. I don't know. I guess it was fine.
Anyway, they're using the computer that they used to sentence Blake again. Guess that's how all trials are run in the Federation. Feed the information to the computer and let it spit out the result. But
although they're actually doing a little more here, which just goes to show you how much of a sham and stuff Blake's trial was.
Yeah, so the defense attorney requests that instead of only putting in the details that 1,000 people were killed on this planet, that Travis apparently ordered another massacre of innocents again.
This is something that happened, far in the past, I think.
Right.
It's not something that happened recently, and they're sort of bringing it back. And if I remember correctly, I think someone at some point says something like, well, why are we bringing back this thing that was already put to trial before and we're bringing it back now? And I don't necessarily remember exactly what it was, but
I don't remember either, but the defense attorney asks, instead of them just putting in the record that 1,000 people die, she wants them to put in the name and cause of death for every single one of those 1,000 people. And the judge is like, that'll take like forever, right? And she's like, yeah. He's like, is there a reason why you want that? And she's like, yeah. He's like,
can you tell us what it is? And she's like, yeah.
And he's like, so what is it? And he's like, yeah. No, she's like, well, we might want to challenge some of those records. And he's like, all right, fine. We'll put every single name and cause of death into the computer.
So they take a break in the trial for a while. And we didn't mention, but Travis is there, obviously, and he looks completely apathetic to what's going on. And so they actually bring this up a little bit later.
Not only that, his eye patch is getting worse.
Yeah, it is.
Every time he shows up, it gets worse. Oh, boy.
Meanwhile, on the Liberator...
Okay, so we cut to the Liberator, and Blake is...
I forget if he's about to go down to the planet or if he already has.
He's about to go down because he does have some contact with all of them before he goes down, because he tells them he tells them something he's going to do that's not true, and has Callie beam him down, but Orak modifies the coordinates, so he beams down somewhere different. But he basically has Zen find him a planet that's uninhabited,
as far as they know,
that's safe, allegedly, where he can just beam down and be alone for a while, I guess. But in this scene, there's Avon has some snappy dialogue with everyone, but I actually really had a problem with his dialogue in this one, and it wasn't the dialogue itself that was the problem. It was the fact that when Paul Dara delivers these lines, he delivers them immediately as soon as people finish talking. He basically actually almost runs over people's lines with his lines. I'm like, no one in real life would come up with these snappy lines and say them that quickly, right? And it really bothered me because it really pointed out the fact that this was Paul Dara acting as Avon and not Avon himself. I don't know. He's never been this bad at running people's lines, but just in this scene, he said his lines almost immediately as soon as people finished saying their lines. So someone would finish oh yeah, we have to go down to the surface, and then he would immediately just jump in and be like, oh yeah, but that's not a good idea, right? I don't know. It just really bothered me.
I didn't necessarily notice that. I mean, I've had a problem with the way Paul Darrow delivers lines, basically since it's not a major problem for me, but I don't like how he takes maybe in the scene he steps on people's lines, but typically he takes a long time to deliver his lines. He really draws out his own lines.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and
that's something that actors tend to do, if they want more.
I mean, and maybe Derek Martinez, was that his name, the director of this story?
Yeah, it was.
Was yo, Paul, you're gonna have to speed it up. And Paul was just like, okay, I can speed up my lines, and just started like stepping on the ends of people's lines. I don't know. I was just bothered that he was saying them so quickly because it like really took me out of the moment because it doesn't feel natural like at all.
Sure.
Not to say the dialogue in this show is like really natural and that anybody would.
It doesn't have to be. I mean,
And it doesn't have to be, but like you would want the delivery at least to feel somewhat natural, like they're actually having a conversation, right? Like,
and I mean, typically the acting on Blake 7 is pretty great. Especially, I mean, I know we keep bringing up the Doctor Who comparison, but especially compared to Doctor Who at this time. I mean, we mentioned Armageddon Factor, and that one had Drax.
Doctor Who right now is being carried by Tom Baker's apathy about acting, which somehow comes off as really good acting. And
being carried by
Mary,
Tom.
Mary Tam, who leaves the show now, is gonna be carried by Lara Ward, basically, actually caring about the show.
It's carried by Tom Baker, playing Tom Baker.
I mean, yeah, it really is, though. Anyway, Blake, so Callie and the crew are like all really suspicious about this, and
Not to jump in, but I guess I am jumping in. Gotta rewatch that Tom Baker Rasputin movie.
Oh boy,
really want to rewatch that because that's also just Tom Baker playing Tom Baker.
Does Tom Baker play anything except Tom Baker ever?
Yeah, I guess he's just one of those actors that just plays himself. Anyway.
So they're all like wondering what to do, and Jenna's like, he might have betrayed us, and Callie's like, I don't think so. Callie's like really loyal to Blake. Avon's like, well, guess we'll never know.
Yeah, at this point, even Villa and Jenna are questioning what Blake's doing.
Right.
Because they kind of think he's just gonna ditch them. And Avon's like, well, I hope he does, because that means the Liberator's mine.
Everyone else is like, hang on, Avon.
I think you mean ours.
Yeah. Villa's like, man, I miss Gan. And they're like, why?
I think Villa is the first one to actually, they sort of hint at Gan's death and things like that. I think Villa is the first one to be like, man, I wish Gan was here.
And they're like, what? And he's like, he was straightforward and to the point, and he trusted everybody. And they're like, yeah, and they got him killed. And Villa's like, wow, you didn't have to be so mean about it.
And I don't know if we want to add this as necessarily a segment or anything, but maybe we should start sort of thinking about a WWGD moment. You know,
what would Gan do? No, because I don't miss Gan that much to care about that.
I actually miss Gan a lot. This episode made me miss Gan a lot. But at the same time, I don't want to start a sort of segment or have that be a regular recurring thing, because what Gan would do is sort of not have any lines, or be off screen and contribute something
do something really inconsistent with his character from week to week. I mean, that's the thing. That segment would just be us coming up with something funny we think Gan would do, and not actually talking about what Gan would do. Because can we really nail down what Gan would do with his super inconsistent characterization?
No, yeah. I mean, there are plenty of reasons why I don't want to have that be an actual thing that we talk about, but it's just something interesting to think about it. You know, maybe at some point.
Yeah. Well.
Maybe Gan would be in another room off learning whatever he was learning. Still want to know.
Well, they eventually ask if Blake left a video message, and the start of the video message is Blake going, man, I really didn't know if you guys were going to care enough to ask if there was a video message.
But Blake basically explains
that he dangerous gamed himself.
He explains how he messed with the coordinates or whatever so that they would never be able to rendezvous with him or track him or even know where he is on this planet, first of all. Mm-hmm. And then he says, I think, if I remember correctly, that because he, let everyone down, because he let Gan die, and because he thinks it's totally his fault, which is basically true, that he is testing himself or something like that. He wants to go down to this planet, and he wants everyone to decide. He wants both himself and everyone else to be able to decide if they want to continue on doing what they've been doing. Mm-hmm. And if they don't meet up at the rendezvous point, well, nobody can blame them because, it's been messed with.
Right. He just says we don't need to think ill of each other. Maybe the scanner just malfunctioned.
Right.
So
I mean, this was pretty cool in my opinion. Not that what happens next is really all that interesting, but I like this sort of setup where Blake goes off by himself and he has to think about it, and then the rest of them are left on the Liberator.
The Liberator crew,
they have to deliberate what's going on.
Jesus Christ. It feels like Saw. It feels like Blake's like, you guys want to play a game? You guys have to decide if you want to continue with me or without me. we're going to rendezvous in 5 hours.
But I mean, there's also the thing at the end, which makes it even more interesting, where makes you think, like, is Blake even being genuine? Is he even being sincere about this, or is this just all part of his plan for them to? Because spoiler, at the end, they do all agree, even Avon, to continue on with Blake. So,
well, when the video message is on, Avon says something like, Blake has a special skill for leading, and you all have a special skill for being led. And Villa's like, what's that supposed to mean?
I think someone tells Avon that he's also being led, and he like plays it off somehow.
He's like, no, I follow. I don't get led, I follow. Something like that. Mm. Meanwhile,
he is just waiting for his opportunity to either take the treasure or take the Liberator.
Yeah, he says, like, we have an opportunity to go get rich. And I'm like, you're already rich. You have that treasure room that we never see.
I think he means apply his riches. Because, I mean, that's why he's a criminal in the first place. He wanted to get rich.
So, meanwhile, on the wheel in space,
Travis is in his cell. And one of the guards from the beginning of the story comes in and offers him a drink.
Yeah.
And this was really weird. I didn't quite know what was going on here, which is
like
okay.
Travis thinks might be poison.
Yeah, I think so, because he tells the guy to drink first, which he does, and he's really reluctant to do it.
Apparently, it's really strong alcohol.
Yeah.
He's like, this will get you smashed quicker than anything.
And this is one of the guards from the beginning. I forget what his name was, but he mentions how he used to be led by Travis, and that even though Travis, basically led all of his companions to their deaths, I forget his exact reasoning behind it, but he was okay with it for some reason.
Yeah. Sketchy. Anyway.
I think he says something along the lines of, like, we all know, like, when we sign up, we all know that we're just tools to be used, and something like that, but so I'm okay with it, and I was good enough to make it out alive or something.
Oh, man, I forgot to mention Travis's really silly march. Earlier, after Statler and Waldorf, that's not their names, but I don't remember. And the general go into the room. Travis gets led into the room, so you actually do find out it's Travis's trial, like, right then. But they stop in front of the door, and then they're like, forward march. And Travis, or I guess Brian Croucher, takes these really exaggerated, massively huge forward steps, and it just looks completely and utterly comical. I actually just burst out laughing at it.
Well, Travis is pretty unhinged now, right? Again, I don't really like Brian Croucher's acting as Travis. Just really, I don't care for it, and kind of wish Stephen Grief just played Travis for the entire run of the show.
Yeah, well, when you want to go on to bigger and better things, you gotta fly now.
Sure. Or when you want to go on to bigger and better things, gotta have your character killed off so you can go back to stage acting.
We're referencing Gang?
Yeah.
Anyway, Servalan meets with the defense attorney again. Is like, don't underestimate Travis. Don't let him do anything at the trial. No surprises, but also don't let him in on your plan. You got to be really careful about this. And he's like, I got this. Okay, I got this.
Yeah, this is when I noticed Servalan's massive earrings. So kind of looked like she got plugs in this episode.
Yikes. The defense attorney goes to meet with Travis in his cell, and he's like, I expected more of you. And he like chucks the still full bottle of alcohol across the room.
Yeah, because Travis is like passed out, or he's pretending to be passed out on the bed. But yeah.
So she's like, yeah, well, I mean, I didn't expect you to be dead. Why you, what you doing? He's like, yo, what's up, my home dog?
What's up, my defense attorney?
Meanwhile, on the planet, Blake is
running around.
Yeah, Blake's running around, not really doing much.
Okay, so this was really funny. Blake is like, this planet's totally uninhabited. I'm going to be in total solitude here. And he takes like 2 steps away from where he teleports down, and you just see like this creature in the background.
Well, then as Blake is walking, you see some dude. You don't see some dude, but you imagine some dude standing off camera squirting him with a water gun because he gets squirted with water, and he's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah,
some planet's supposed to be uninhabited.
And they're like, there's some rocks that are getting chucked at him.
He's just
he just sort of brushes it off. You think if you get a rock thrown at you, you'd be like, what the heck? We can try to investigate. But he's just like, yeah, whatever. And it happens again, and then he goes and starts investigating.
Right. So
he comes into contact with this alien creature whose name I forgot.
Right.
And it's sort
her,
of
she, her name.
It's at least played by a woman. I don't know exactly.
Zill?
Zill, right. And Zill's costume is kind of questionable. Again, if it seems like we rail into this show hard, it's because we do, and two, it's because we like it, and three, it's because the show has shown us better that it can do better, right? And Zill's costume isn't like all there.
No, it looks like a bodysuit that they just attached a big nose to.
And you're right. It sort of has like this headpiece thing that goes from like the back of Zill's head to her nose, basically.
Yeah.
It just looks a little questionable, and it's sort of also just beige, which is that's fine, whatever.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, they can do better, but it looks like the story was, I mean, I don't want to say it, but it looks like this was a filler story, really.
Yeah. You mean the story down on the planet?
Basically, this whole episode feels like filler. I mean, they deal with Gan's, like, death, and there's, like, actual repercussions, but it doesn't feel like it's super consequential in the end, though.
Well, what happens at the end with Travis going off definitely is.
Right.
But, I mean, the trial...
Is a sham.
Did we need a trial? That's my question. Did we need to see Travis's trial? Because they can face the repercussions of him being unhinged and almost killing Servalan and almost getting himself killed in other ways.
But I think the trial is the catalyst for that. I think the trial is the catalyst that pushes Travis over that metaphorical cliff face, right? He's always been unhinged, but he's never been so insane as to threaten his commanding officer Servalan. He always followed and trusted Servalan until now. I think the trial is what really pushes him over that edge where he just goes, everything I must do is to kill Blake. Everything I do is to kill Blake. I don't need Servalan. I don't need the Federation, right?
Right. And I think the end of Pressure Point is what kind of drove that home. So I'm just wondering, in an alternate universe, in an alternate Blake 7, if Travis or Servalan had just showed up and it had been in dialogue that they're not working together, that Travis is sort of, doing his own thing now, would that have worked better? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think it would have. I think we'd be out here like, wow, really lame that they just did that in a line of dialogue instead of showing us the fallout.
Yeah, maybe. Again, I don't like how they presented the trial in this episode because it was just kind of boring. So even if it's a better idea for them to show the repercussions of it, either in the form of a trial or something else, I wish they did it better than they did in this episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, Zill is kind of weird.
She
at first, I'm just going to call Zill a she because it was played by a woman.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
I think Blake refers to her as she at some point.
Anyway, Zill at first can't communicate with Blake, but after a second or two, can.
Yeah. She basically says that Blake can't stop moving or he'll get absorbed into the earth.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Or not the earth, but like
Zill's like
earth, not
the planet.
Planet, the earth, but like earth
the
is
ground.
in the ground, yeah.
And Zill is like, move really slow. You're not going to want to move slow here.
And he's like, what? I thought this planet was uninhabited. Meanwhile, on the Liberator, they're like scanning the planet. They like set up a search pattern to look for Blake, or for the beacon.
Yeah.
And Jenna's like, I see you didn't include the entire southern half of the planet. And Avon's like, I doubt Blake can think and swim at the same time. The entire southern half of the planet is ocean. And Jenna's like, oh, right, carry on. So they kind of just bum around the Liberator for a while, waiting for the search pattern to work.
Yeah, the Liberator, the stuff that happens on the Liberator, honestly, isn't that interesting until the very end when Blake makes it back.
Mm-hmm. And on the planet, Blake kind of just bums around too. To be honest, everybody kind of just bums around for the story.
Yeah, and this is also going on while Travis is sort of just in the cell, and Servalan and the defense attorney are discussing things.
Shouldn't have called it trial. Should have called it walking simulator. At the trial, Travis co-ops the opening statement by his defense attorney.
Sure, yeah. Can at least, though, mention Villa's sneakers, because he's wearing white sneakers in this.
Hey, man, you got to be comfortable while you're in space. I mean, the boots are impractical for like every single day wear, right? Boots get like really uncomfortable after a while. Can you imagine wearing them every single day? Your feet are going to be really calloused up.
Sure.
And, Villa's just trying to make sure that,
Villa, again, being the most sensible member of the crew.
right, at the end of the day, that his comfort and fashion sense comes first. But yeah, Travis co-ops his opening statement from his defense attorney because she's like, look, I'm just going to say you were a good officer and you had a moment of weakness. He's like, no, I'll make the opening statement.
No, I'm going to grandstand and probably destroy my entire case. But that's okay. That's okay because I'm going to run off anyway.
Well, he doesn't know he's going to run off. That's sheer luck, if we're being honest.
He might have. I feel like because of his sort of apathy to what's going on around him, maybe he's thinking like, all right, my first chance, I'm going to bolt.
Maybe. Servalan warns the defense attorney not to let Travis do anything because he's completely unhinged and yeah, he looks apathetic on the outside, but inside he's definitely got a plan. She's like, it's a real bummer he has to die because he's way, way better than anything else I've got. So
Travis basically pins his crimes on the Federation.
Yeah, he just says that he was trained to kill and that because of that, killing only came naturally to him, which is a really flimsy argument when you think about it. But
I mean, it's true that the Federation training people to kill is not like a great thing.
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse Travis's actions. And like the judge says later, he's like, yeah, we train people to kill, but we don't train people to kill innocents.
Right. And back in Seek, Locate, Destroy, I don't know if they touch on it in this episode as much as they did in that episode, but you kind of think that they would because Travis actually just massacred a bunch of people after they had already surrendered. I don't know if they actually bring that up in this episode. They just say he killed innocents.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it might be related.
Yeah.
A related incident. My favorite part of the trial scenes are after they take the recess the first time. Rontaine and Burkall have a lot of snarky dialogue about what's going on in the trial, like, Travis seems to be slightly disturbed at this. And like, but you can never tell. You can never tell what's going on in Travis's mind. And they're like, well, what are our bets on whether or not he just blows up at the trial? I don't know. I thought that was kind of fun. A little bit of fun in this really dark and grim and cynical universe. Bummer that they die. So, yeah.
Eventually, the planet is revealed to be doing something. And I don't even remember what it was.
I don't know, but the ground
things.
is like getting absorbed into the ocean right now. It's like sinking and it's going to be absorbed and the planet's going to be an ocean for some reason. The planet's like implied to be alive in some capacity.
It has some form of sentience. Again, remind me of that Ursula K. Le Guin story, Vaster Than Empires and More Slow. Except that is way better than how they do it here.
Reminds me of Ego, the living planet, who's a Green Lantern in the DC comics.
Sure.
Well, actually, not DC.
Yeah, Green Lantern is DC.
I'm thinking of a different planet. Ego is the one from Marvel. The one from DC is named something different. They both have living planets, which is really confusing. But anyway.
Yeah, well, if it works once, gotta capitalize and cash in on it until it's stale, run into the ground, and people are completely sick of it.
Yeah, Ego is the one in Marvel, who also shows up in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. The one in DC is a Green Lantern, but I do not remember his name.
Well, I don't know anything about comic books.
I just read the Wikipedia plot summaries.
Is that even fun? I'd imagine that would be not fun at all.
It's more fun than paying $40 for like an omnibus edition of the comic book.
I'm actually reading Victor LaValle's Destroyer comic later this afternoon. But yeah, that's another story.
For another time.
Sure.
So,
to quote The Neverending Story, one of my top 5 books of all time. I've read like 300 to 400 novels probably. So.
Well, you already know my thoughts on that book. So, Blake is like panicking now because he's not going to make it to the rendezvous point before he gets swallowed up by this planet. And he's like, oh shoot. Meanwhile, on the Liberator, Avon has figured out that the planet is swallowing everything. He's like, well, I guess we just got to look for Blake instead of the transmitter signal. And he like hacks into the teleporter device and he's able to beam Blake up right before the planet swallows him.
Yeah. Blake is like, well, thanks, Avon.
Yeah, Villa's like, Avon modified the teleporter. We don't even know if it's going to work anymore.
Avon's like, don't worry, it definitely will. Gotta wonder if that's going to come into play later on. Probably not.
No, probably not.
Anyway, Avon has a conversation with Blake. Because everyone is like, yeah, they'd all decide to continue traveling with Blake, and Blake decides to continue leading them. and stuff. And Avon's like, wow, they really bought your little speech about how you're okay with, everyone just going their separate ways, and, they really bought into it. And Blake's like, nah, I was totally being genuine.
Yeah, and Avon's like, one more death will do it, and they'll all leave you. And Blake's like, you better watch your back then. It would be really ironic if it was you.
Yeah, I like
and Avon just doesn't even respond to this. He's just so flabbergasted. He has no response.
I think it's just not even a good comeback, so he doesn't even have to honor it with a response.
I mean, I think it's a good comeback, because clearly what Avon's saying is, if somebody else dies, then Avon can make up with the Liberator and everyone will leave Blake.
Yeah.
And Blake's saying, like, well, then it would really suck if you're the one who's dead then, because everyone will leave me and you won't have the Liberator.
Yeah. I just like how they actually brought up how Blake could just be completely lying about all of this.
I just like how they brought up how Blake can just kill Avon in his sleep, and everybody could kill everyone in their sleep. I don't think you realize how much trust is actually like at play on this ship right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and Callie's probably still pitting them all against each other telepathically.
What?
You don't remember that theory we had from a couple weeks ago?
Anyway, then Blake makes his grand return to the ship by basically announcing he's come up with an even more foolhardy and stupid and dumb plan. He basically just wants to attack Servalan's headquarters. He basically wants to just attack Servalan's headquarters right now. And everyone's like, okay.
Yeah, he gives some total garbage reason as to why this is a good idea. I forget what his reasoning was.
Avon also somehow comes up with a way for them to just completely avoid Federation patrols, because now they won't show up on their scans or something.
They make a big deal about this at the end. I mean, I think this was because the episode underran or something, but they make a big deal about how, like, there's Federation ships nearby, and they didn't see us, even though they should be able to, or something.
Yeah, because Avon built some device that, like, hides their signature on the scanners.
Yeah. Which
is weird, because now you wonder why he didn't do that a year ago.
Maybe you didn't know how.
You really think Avon would pass up an opportunity to show off his technical prowess to everybody?
Yeah, exactly. That's why maybe he didn't know how until now. So now
maybe he got the schematics from Aurak.
Yeah,
maybe he's just playing it off as his own gadget, but he actually got it from Aurak.
Yeah, kind of like how Twitter has their new privacy policy coming out and isn't even mentioning that it's for GDPR. They're just like, yep, we value your privacy so much that we're changing our privacy policy.
Yeah.
Just needed to rant about that for a minute.
We're changing our privacy policy. Except you're not going to read it, because nobody ever reads those things.
Well, I read their sort of mission statement about it, and they're not even mentioning the GDPR, European Union thing that is going to mandate them to change their privacy policy or face massive fines. That's why they're doing it. It's not because they care about people's privacy.
I mean, it's all marketing speak, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to, like... You want it to... You want it to make it... You want people to think you care.
Yeah. But I mean...
When you don't, really.
Yeah.
Travis is sentenced to death, and also dishonorable discharge, but I already thought he was discharged dishonorably once before, so that's nothing new for him.
What, you mean before the series even started?
Yeah. Sure. Because I thought that was why Servalan had to, like, reinstate him into the Corps, because no one wanted Travis, because he was, like, tainted goods, so to speak.
And he was at least imprisoned before the show started.
They're like, we're gonna strip you of your rank, we're gonna dishonorably discharge you, we're going to take everything away from you, and then we'll kill you. I was like, why don't you just kill him? And at that exact moment, Blake starts his attack run on the wheel.
Which provides Travis the opportunity to escape.
And not even just at that exact moment. We have to drive home how much of a lucky thing this is for Travis, because Blake hits the courtroom, the one tiny part of that wheel that he had to hit to help Travis out. This is so incredibly improbable that Travis...
I mean, that's whatever.
Travis should just leave and just thank Blake for saving him and just go retire on a planet somewhere where he doesn't have to die. But no, Travis has completely lost it at this point, because he knows Servalan set him up. He knows Servalan gave him basically the worst defense attorney in existence.
He goes to Servalan's room basically to say, like, look, I'm free and I'm working by myself now.
Yeah. And Servalan's like, oh. And he's like, yeah, you're going to give me a ship and then you can pursue me and Blake at the same time. And she's like, okay. She gives him a ship and 3 mutoids, which I thought was very nice of Servalan. She's going above and beyond her duty.
Going above and beyond the demands of this maniacal killer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about this. There's a lot of similarities between how the defense attorney in this is kind of intentionally sabotaging Travis's case, and an episode of Star Trek Enterprise I watched recently where Captain Archer gets put on trial by the Klingons, and his defense attorney's just like, yep, don't worry, I got this. And they go into the trial, and the defense attorney's like, yeah, we don't have anything to say. We're not presenting any evidence in our defense. And then the captain's just like, what? It's like, this is how Klingon trials work. I just say that we're not presenting any defense, and then we wait for the result to come down, and you'll probably die.
Sounds good to me.
Which I feel like has a lot of similarities to this, where the defense attorney's just like, yeah, we're not making any major statements. We'll make one opening statement. We're not presenting any evidence. Kind of an intentional self-sabotage there. Anyway, so Travis gets this ship to go off on only 3 mutoids. Servalan is like kind of snarky about it. She's like, I want the mutoids wiped, and I want them to follow anybody. Well, the first person who comes up to them and uses the code word fugitive. And Travis is like, wow, thanks. Meanwhile, on the Liberator, Blake is just like, well, we did that. Let's get out of here. Standard by 12, Jenna.
Yeah, I forget how it actually ends, but I'm sure it's on some sort of sitcom-esque line, as it usually is.
I think it just ends. I don't even think it ends on a line. I think they just leave and it just ends.
Yeah, it's sort of similar, just abrupt ending, as most Blake 7 episodes have, which is nice. I kind of like it.
It's okay.
I've grown to like the abrupt endings of Blake 7 episodes.
Much like the abrupt endings we have in life, I guess. Well, so that's the end of the story. Should we do rankings?
Sure. And why don't we switch it up? Why don't you go first?
Wow, really switching it up there. All right, well, I'm ranking this Travis's eye patch. Much like Travis's eye patch, every time Travis and Servalan show up, the story seemed to vary wildly in quality.
Right,
and like Travis's eye patch in this story is basically falling apart at the seams because it's got nearly nothing going on. It's being held together by hopes and prayers.
And that seems
Gan's death.
That's a trend that can be taken to another level, right? Just the props and costumes seem to get worse as the series go on, and then sort of maybe reset at the beginning of a series, but then again, this is sort of just a middle of the season type thing with, again, probably what was probably a lot of padding and filler content.
This is kind of the low after the high, I think. Gan's death was the huge major event at the midpoint of the season, and then they cooled it back this story with something really low-key.
I was looking at ratings, and this one had far higher ratings than Pressure Point and Horizon, probably because people heard that Gan died, and they're like, let's go watch Blake 7.
Well, so this is a little bit of a tangent, but it is related on Bondfinger, which is Flight Through Entirety's podcast where they comment on Bond movies. They always talk about how the reception, or like the amount of money a Bond movie makes, is actually typically actually representative of how good the previous movie was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's similar here. A lot of people are going to watch Trial because Pressure Point was really good. So the word of mouth spread, hey, watch Blake 7. It's like getting really good. So a lot more people are going to watch Trial.
Right.
So that's like not an indication that Trial is any good. Really, It's more of an indication that Pressure Point was good.
Yeah, that's what happened in the Metal Gear game series, where the Metal Gear Solid was like, people really loved it. So then Metal Gear Solid 2 was like the best selling one in that series, and a lot of people didn't like that one. Mm-hmm. So then the third one, which is like was received the best by quote unquote critics or whatever, is like one of the lowest selling ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a trend through a lot of, I think,
stuff.
Not serialized media, but like media that releases multiple installments over
that same
course
thing,
of time.
Yeah, that same thing right now is happening with Nicole Krauss's new book. Like, people really love History of Love, and that's also one of my favorite books of all time. So her new book is like selling really well, but people aren't really liking it.
I mean, that happens with, it happened with the Star Trek movies too. Into Darkness made like a ton of money because the first reboot Star Trek movie was like really good. And then a lot of people didn't like Into Darkness, so Star Trek Beyond, which is, in my opinion, the best of the three, didn't make a lot of money because of that. So
yeah, it happens a lot.
Anyway, What is your rating for this story?
I rated this one something similar, another piece of clothing, I guess you could say. I rated this one a Servalan's earrings because it just stands out as like something that's bad and something that like is really noticeably bad compared to everything around it, right? Servalan has had some pretty out there costumes, but like the plugs she apparently got between Pressure Point and this were just a bad idea. You know, plugs aren't really a good idea because you'll never be able to get your ear back to its former shape.
Yeah, never be able to undo that.
Yeah.
Kind of like they're never going to be able to undo destroying all hope of learning anything about Zen back in Redemption. Kind of like how they can not really undo Travis running off on his own now. Kind of like how they can't undo Gan's death.
Yeah, they can't undo Gan's death. They can undo Travis running off on his own.
Yeah, but I don't think they will.
But it's going to be very difficult, but they could do it.
I don't think they will, though.
We'll have to see where they go. I actually don't know. That's probably one of the few things I haven't spoiled about Blake 7.
Oh, I do.
Oh.
That's one of the few things I have spoiled about Blake 7. Whoops. Well. Anyway, yeah, kind of a low point in the season, both in intensity and in quality.
Just enjoyment, I guess.
Hopefully,
I'm probably going to get a lot of feedback on this. Like, what? You don't like Trial? Trial's the best episode of Series B.
Well, if you think that, you can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Trial. If you think Trial is the greatest thing since sliced bread, then, well,
you're wrong.
You're wrong.
I mean,
Jam is the best thing since sliced bread.
I mean, even if Trial was the best television episode ever made, there are plenty of other things that are better than TV that have come out since sliced bread.
Exactly. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Zenith, a Blake 7 podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Killer. But until then, the end.